Hello and welcome back to the academyofworship.org YouTube channel. My name is Chris and today we are learning something a little more complex. I hope that I explain it in a way that is helpful for you as a worship guitar player. One of the issues with electric guitar in worship is you have to find a place to fit. I have a way older video on this channel that goes through a whole bunch of this stuff. My hope is to update some things and to break it down into smaller chunks. What we're covering today is electric guitar chords. Now that sounds overly simplistic, and I'm hoping that by the end of this it is relatively simplistic. We're going to be breaking it down in how the electric guitar should be thought of in worship, at least generally speaking. So if we do a quick overview here, we have the whole band's range, right? From here to here. We have the high end of the band here and the low end, like the kick drum and the bass down here. So today I'm going to be showing you some places that you can move chords around to hopefully fit around whatever's happening in the worship team. If a part's not being covered, or maybe they're playing a chord down low, you know where to go up high to play a chord. Or if maybe there's a lot of high end information and you need to fill in some low end information, you can do that as well. Disclaimer. Today is going to include a little bit of music theory, but my hope in showing you this music theory is to make you understand why we're playing what we're playing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the music theory itself. It's going to be mainly playing and some tricks and tips to get you into the right place on the guitar neck. So first, let's review the basics of some of this music theory we're going to be talking about. A major scale is split up into 7 notes. So today we're going to be working in E major. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, E flat, E. Why is that important? Well, because everything we're going to be talking about today is an outline of one of the chords that is based on one of those major scale tones. You should know that all of this is transposable to any other key. Hopefully you can see here, every single scale tone is outlined here. We've got the first, which I told you is E. We've got the second scale tone, which is F sharp. The third scale tone, which is G sharp. The fourth scale tone, which is A. The fifth scale tone, which is B. The sixth scale tone, which is C sharp. The seventh, which is E flat, and then it starts over again. If you had an 8 here and on, it just starts over again. Now you'll see next to each one of these a major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. That's what dim stands for. And that's the type of chord that's based on that note in the scale. So if you're in the key of A major and you played the 1 chord, you would be playing an A, right? Or an A major. A B minor would be the second in the key of A, and so on. So depending on where you're starting, what your reference point is, in this case, E, we're in E major, we're going to be starting with E here. That's all important for a reason, okay? Let me show you on the guitar. First, we have the first scale tone, which I told you was an E. Now, if we base a chord on that, you get an E major, which we all know and love. The second would be the F sharp minor, right? Because F sharp would be the second scale tone. And we know that based on that, which you should pause and go back and look at if you forgot, it'd be an F sharp would be the next scale tone. And we go F sharp minor. The third scale tone will be G sharp, and based on that and our knowledge of what order the major minor goes in, it would be a G sharp minor. The next chord would be an A, and we know based on, again, that major, minor, minor, major thing, it would be A major. And then next would be a B in the scale tones, and that'd be a B major. Next we have a C sharp minor, which incidentally is the 6th chord in the E major scale. And then we have a tricky chord. Don't worry, we're not going to come back to this specific chord. It is called a diminished chord, and this is the E flat diminished. And then we start over again on E major. Okay, why is that important? That was a lot to take in. My main point is every major scale has 7 notes in it, and every one of those notes is either a major, a minor, or in the case of the 7th chord, a diminished. You can go back, screen cap, pause that little sheet I held up that has that order because that doesn't change. Boring stuff kind of over. What can we do with those in worship that really helps us out? What I have found as an electric guitar player is our job isn't to play all the big chords that you're used to playing. For instance, the chords I just showed you. You probably wouldn't be playing those if you were looking to fit somewhere in the worship music. You'd more than likely want to choose some chords either up higher or maybe some different voicings of those chords that don't include so many notes. For instance, you're not playing all 6 strings at once. So stick with me. My job today is to show you how to make some cool sounding chords using 2 notes. So here we go. I'm going to show you some patterns. I'm going to show you some stuff that you can move anywhere on the neck as long as you know the scale you're in. I'm going to show you in context what it can sound like. What you're going to hear in the background is a droning E, and that's giving you a bed so you can hear these changes over it. And then I'll explain what I do. Here we go. So what you heard right there was me moving those chords I just showed you, mind you, a different voicing, around the neck. And that's just one of the ways you can do it. So let me show you what I just did. I started with an E major chord based on the A string on the 7th fret, like this. But what I did is I took this part on the 9th fret, took away this finger, and I'm left with basically a bar chord right here across the D, the G, and the B strings. And then I removed even more notes, and I played just these 2 right here. So if you notice, it's this chord deconstructed into this shape, just these 2 notes. Played over an E major chord that sounds like an E major. But the cool part is you're taking away a lot of the information there and it sticks out a lot more. One trick on electric guitar is play less. You've heard that old rule, less is more. Well, in this case, that's true. Take away some stuff. You've got bass players playing low stuff. You've got acoustic guitar players playing other stuff. You've got keyboard players playing other stuff. There's a lot of musical and sound information already happening. If you want your part to stick out and sound cool, space your notes out. In this case, we're just taking away notes until the notes are far enough away to where they sound distinct. Now, if we take what we know about all the other scale tones and the chords based off of those in E major, we can do the same thing. So we just played the 1 chord. Now the 2nd scale tone was F sharp, and based on that, we're playing an F sharp minor. If we pretend that this shape right here is a major shape, the next shape is going to be your minor shape when you're basing everything off of your D string like this right here. When you're playing these shapes. From this to this. So we went from a major shape, it's an E major, remember? To a minor shape. If you notice, we play a minor chord here. We're taking a bunch of stuff away, and you're left with just these 2 notes of that minor chord right here. Just these 2. And then we move up to the 3rd scale tone, which we also know is a minor. So we keep this shape right here, move it up a whole step. Your minor shape right there. And then we know that the 4th scale tone is going to be an A major. In that case, it looks like this, same kind of deal. There's your A, right? But we're taking away the same amount of notes and we're playing right here. I think you can see the pattern by now. The next one is going to be a B major, which is based right here, or take them away. Right? The next one's going to be a C sharp minor, and that's if you played it, and I'm getting kind of high up in the neck here, so I'm hitting this guy. And we have these two notes here. So what you can do is when you start getting high up in the neck, if you do have a guitar like this and it gets a little hard playing right here, you can start moving stuff down an octave. It's the same shape. So for instance, right here we had the A major, right? Because we're basing it off of that A on the A string here, on the 12th fret. We paired it down to this shape. And just move it down an entire octave to your 2nd fret. Does that look familiar? How about an A major chord? We're just playing the D string, the E note right here on the 2nd fret, and the B string note of that A major chord here on the 2nd fret. If we move this up to a B major here, same thing, right? And then we got your C minor chord right here if you used this bar chord. We're moving a bunch of notes and leaving just these two guys, still D and B string. The tricky one is the 7th scale tone, which is the diminished. But the cool thing is you can use the major shape. So this shape right here that we're using on the A and the B, you can use for the 7th scale tone here, because we're leaving out the root of it, which makes it sound even more diminished. So you're actually playing this chord, which has an E flat in the root, but we can ignore that because we're not using it, just like we took it out of all the other chords. It's just these two notes. So the entire thing, I'm going to start here and move it down and come up. E major, starting on the 1 chord, the E. The 2nd chord is an F sharp minor. Remember, our shape is this way. So. And then we've got a G sharp minor, same shape. Then I'm going to do an A major, which is here, but I'm going to move it down, whoop, down here. B major, remember, right here, based on the B. C sharp minor, just like this, but we're only using these two notes. And that diminished chord, which we just shape it like a regular major chord right here. And then start over. So nice and fast, in order of the scale, only using 2 notes for each scale tone. Here we go, starting on E. That's starting over right there. So that's it. Okay, I know that's a lot to take in. I recommend you pause, maybe rewind it a whole bunch of times, and look at that pattern, okay? Because that pattern doesn't change no matter what key you're in. So for instance, if we started in the key of A, we would still use this chord shape right here, but we started on an A major, which we know can be right here. So you got, there's your A. 2nd scale tone is going to be a B minor. 3rd scale tone is going to be a C sharp minor, D major, E major, you already know this one, to an F sharp minor right here, and then you've got your G diminished chord, then A major. It's the same thing for everything. It's just right now, like I said, we're staying in E, and that transition right there sounded really crazy going to A like that, but there you go. That's the stuff that you can use. So if someone's rocking an E chord, an E major chord, down low on an acoustic guitar, the bass is pumping out an E, and you want to make something that sounds really pretty on top, but the keyboard's kind of doing a pad thing, just grab this major chord right here, and instead of playing this, just play these guys. Now here's the fun thing. You can move those around a lot because there's so little information in those chords. Yeah, you've got some thirds in there and some things that are recognizable, but you can substitute those and move them around while people are playing. If you're playing an E major chord, and then they move to the 4 chord, which in E is an A major, you can go. Or, but you'll notice that you can start substituting those chords and there's space in them. So maybe you don't want to move those around like that, and you're like, well, what are some other options? Well, you do have other options. Again, we're talking about less information per chord, but everything is based on those chords I showed you. There's no difference. You're just choosing different notes, or maybe you're putting the notes in a different place on the neck. So let's try a different thing. We're basing this one on the low E string. And because of that, you got an E major chord starting it out. But we remove a whole bunch of information and just use the low E string and the G string right here, this G sharp. Play them together. And then we've got our minor shape, which is going to be just these two strings because we know our next chord is an F sharp minor. But we're just going to be taking this and keeping the two strings we're still using, low E string and the G string. You've got a G sharp minor. That's your minor shape. And your major shape for A major is here. So instead of this whole chord, you're removing everything but this one and this one. And because it's easier for me, I'm just switching fingers, but it's this and this. Same thing for B, you just slide it up. Then our minor shape for C sharp minor. And then because we're basing everything off of the E string for that 7 diminished chord, we're going to be using our minor shape still. Back to our major shape. Right there on the E. So hopefully that makes sense to you. We're taking chords, deconstructing them, literally taking notes out of them, using 2 of the notes per chord and moving them around. So hopefully you can hear that there's a bunch of space in those chords now. And yeah, maybe you want to play those when you're playing solo in a coffee shop or something like that, but when you're playing with a full band, I guarantee you that's going to sound really, really good. You'll also notice that a lot of modern worship songs, that's all the electric guitar player is doing. He may have a cool intro to the song, or there's a signature part that comes in on a chorus or something, and a lot of times it's based around chords like this, where they're just taking a simple chord, pulling a bunch of notes out, playing 2 notes of the chord, and sliding them around. This should work over the same drone that we used earlier, because we're still based in the key of E major. So let's try it. I'm going to play these low notes over it. These may be closer to the octave of the drone. You'll still hear how there's space in the notes that I'm playing. So let's check it out. All right, we'll do one last thing before I wrap it up. Sometimes you will hear an electric guitar player say that using a capo is cheating. I'm going to show you why it's not. Using our same key of E major, we're going to pretend like my capo is the nut right here on the guitar. You have drone strings that you can use. Let me show you. You'll notice that in the high part of the E major chord, your B string and your high E string are open, right? Like this. So that means you can drone them. Let's use what we already know and add those strings to it, and you'll see how you can get some really cool chords using open drone strings. I think you can see kind of the possibilities you have when you have that available to you, which if you change keys, for instance, if you throw a capo on the 5th fret here, you could use the same relative positions to an E major chord to your capo and still have open droning strings. So if you're in the key of A major, you'd have these 2 strings capoed down. and they would be your drone strings. So you can see that if you capoed on the 5th fret and you used relative chords, like an E major relative to the capo, you could use the same finger positions using 2 notes at a time and some drone strings, and you'd get those cool voicings. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you can take what I've shown you, maybe practice it, get used to the patterns that you make with your fingers, because I said it's all relative and it doesn't change. Those patterns stay the same no matter what key you're in. Just know where your root note is and know what scale that you're basing everything off of, and you're home free. You can start throwing in a bunch of cool voicings on your guitar that really help out your worship team. So go check it out, play with it, goof with it. Like I always say, turn some knobs, flip some switches, but in this case, maybe move your fingers and check some things out. Throw on some delay and reverb. Once you're confident, you'll find some gorgeous soundscapes on your guitar that maybe you didn't know were there. So please like, subscribe, head on over to academyofworship.org, and I've got a free gift over there for you. You can check it out. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know if this helped you, if this is something you didn't already know, or maybe you have something you can add. That'd be great too, because this is a community, guys. It's not just me. If you have something to add, I am by no means the know-it-all guitar guy. I just have a couple of cool things I've figured out, sharing them with you guys. So that's it for now. See you later.